Hi everybody, this is Annette Anderson again. I want to introduce our NASHA Market Training Part 2 and Part 3. So we've kind of merged them together. It has to do with the volunteering in a cultural context, trying to help you learn some of the do's and don'ts to working within the Native community, and then also to learn a little bit about some of the laws and regulations that would relate to your selling through the NASHA market. So I hope that they're helpful. Some of our videos are going to kind of pop in and out with me looking in a different outfit maybe, or there may be hums in it and all that. This is not a professional videography, and I'm not shooting for a bunch of scores on YouTube. We just want to be sure that you get enough information where you get comfortable volunteering. So thanks everybody for your understanding, and we will enjoy seeing you at our next volunteer opportunity. Thanks. Bye-bye. Hi everyone, this is Annette Anderson. I'm with the Indigenous Institute of the Americas. This is our NASHA Market Training Part 2 on volunteering in a cultural context. So the purpose of this is to give new volunteers perspective of how to relate in the Native community, especially if you were either raised outside of the Native community or you do not have any Native background at all. This could be helpful for those of you who are born and raised even in Native communities. It should be a refresher on some of the important things that we value and things that we don't value in what people do and say and how they behave. And so I hope this is very helpful to you in some way or another. So the first thing I want to talk about is our relationships with the Native community when we're at powwows, when we're at social gathering, even if we're at a craft show and it's a predominantly Native show, or American Indian Heritage Day, which happens once a year. Our volunteers should have the same demeanor as the rest of the Native people that are at these shows. And so at times we have our NASHA market with us, and when we're at an international festival, we're at somewhere where people expect for sellers to be very out there, like drawing people to the table, maybe encouraging folks, with a lot of, hey, do you know much about Native culture? Come over here and we'll tell you more about it, that type of thing. That is not how we do it. Obviously, we're preaching to the choir. Is that what you say? So typically, if you go to a Native event, such as a powwow, and you're a vendor, people are laid back, they're rather sedate. They wait till people who are interested in purchasing ask questions. So we are not aggressive and we're not invasive with people that are near our table or come to our table. We sit back and we wait until people come closer, and then we gently start to ask if they know much about what's on the table and would they like to know more. But it's more about would you, not let me and I'm going to, and that type of thing. So keep in mind that our demeanor is very different if we are at a Native event rather than if we are taking our NASHA market outside of our culture and we're selling to cultures that are more clearly expecting. That kind of a sales tactic, I guess, is what I'm getting at. The other thing is that what you've learned as a person could be a stereotypical view of Native culture, and I won't know that, and neither will the rest of my committee know that until something maybe comes out of your mouth and we go, what? Where'd you hear that? What did you get that from? So I want to say to you a few things. There are over 550 federally recognized tribes, depending on the Bureau of Indian Affairs and what's on their website. But we know that we have a lot of federally recognized tribes. We have state recognized tribes also. Those come and go too. All of these are based on rules and regulations set up by Congress typically. And then we have tribes that were never federally recognized or state recognized, again, through the federal process. So that means that we have many, many Native people who may not qualify as Native people according to the federal government, but in terms of our cultural similarities, our ceremonies, and our practices, we may be very similar in some ways or not. And that includes all the people of North America, Mexico, the US, Canada, as well as our South American tribes. And all of those people typically we refer to as Indian people, and many people from those countries, though, do not see or realize their originality and their indigenosity. That's a new word. I like that. The indigenous nature of their relationship with their countries. And so we look at everyone as a tribal person, even if you are from outside of the indigenous people of the Americas. Your people at some point in time in history were tribal people. And who were those? Were you French? And what were, or were you from the Druid people and the Irish traditions or the Scottish traditions? Those were all bands and clans, and when you think about it. And so, do you know your tribe is probably just as important as us knowing our tribe. We refer to ourselves from a tribal perspective. We typically don't refer to ourselves as, hi, I'm Native American. We would probably we'd say, hey, I'm Chickasaw, Cherokee, what's your tribe? And those are it's perfectly okay to ask someone if they're a tribal person and what tribe they're from or what tribes they're from. Many people have multiple tribes. The federal government tries to make you have one tribe or makes you define yourself by one tribe. That's not necessarily how we see ourselves. And so I just wanted to point that out. As a result of that, we have to keep in mind that not all people had teepees, not all people had hogans. Not all people are traditional in the sense that they follow all the ceremonies of their tribal people. We have many folks that mix Christian traditions with tribal traditions. We have some people that have no tribal traditions whatsoever and may be very strictly religious from a Christian perspective and have given up some of the other opportunities that they have within their culture. So there's a lot of diversity, is my point. And try not to make assumptions of people based on either what you've read, the movies that you've seen. Always fact checked. Always check with people within the culture. Just because you read a favorite book, just because you have a favorite movie, just because you read something on Google does not make it right. And I have plenty of stories. Some of them are pretty comical of ways in which information about Native people has been distorted over time on the internet. And that's one of the purposes of our organization's website, iiamericas.org, is to provide accurate information about our culture. So our Ask Uncle Gregory series is something I encourage every volunteer to watch every video. It is probably the only time you're going to get accurate information coming straight from an elder who happens to be a linguistics expert, or I guess you'd call it, as well as a social worker who has a background in sociology and world's people. And he has traveled across the world and knows a lot about Native people all the way from the Alaskan traditions down to the Amazon. And so Ask Uncle Gregory is a wonderful opportunity for you to watch. And I would encourage you to submit more questions for that video series. So we want to help prevent embarrassment. We want to help you fit in and help you feel a part of things. Some of the suggestions I'm going to give you are things that were passed down to me by my family, what I learned from other aunties and uncles within the culture, and I want to share them with you so that you don't make the same mistakes that I made as a youngster and other people I've seen make mistakes. Many times I don't even know the origin of why we do what we do, and sometimes I can't tell you why we do what we do. I'll just say, well, that's all I know is my auntie told me, or that's what Uncle Gregory told me, and so I'm gonna follow what my elders say. And that's what I would suggest to you is if you have an elder giving you feedback, don't question it, just do as they suggest. They always have a reason for suggesting it, and it's always in your best interest to listen so that you can fit in and people don't feel like that you're counter to our culture. So we've talked about stereotyping and being careful about that. Let's talk about proselytizing. One of the things that has been very harmful to our culture historically is the influx of European religion. And although many of you listening to this may be consider yourself devout Christians, a devout Catholic, you may be Jewish, you may be Muslim, you may be of all different, you may be Hindu. We welcome all religions, but what we want you to understand is that we do not need to be saved, And if the purpose of you volunteering is you're going to save the Indians, which was actually a historical concept, and we still get calls today from volunteer groups at churches who want to volunteer not because they want to help us, but because they want to make Christians out of the native people. What you don't understand is that the majority of people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area already have a Christian church that they attend. And if they don't attend it, they at least go and get their fry bread on Friday nights once a month there. So please understand that we consider that another mistake in history and has really damaged our culture. The taking away of a lot of our ceremonies, taking away of our language, the cutting of hair, change of our clothing, all of those are associated with proselytizing from the past. So please don't have that be your agenda. And if it is, this is not the organization to be a part of. Another aspect of the Dallas-Fort Worth community that's unique is we have 3 to 4 generations of people that came here as a result of the relocation program, which was a federal plan designed to take people off of reservations, bring them to urban areas, and ultimately it was to try to remove the obligation of the federal government to take care of Indian people based on treaties. So usually it's a land issue of some sort. It's an attempt to get mineral rights. It's another in our perspective, it's another aversive way that the government has had of trying to break down our culture. But what has been interesting and amazing is that in most of the urban areas where this happened, we had this vibrant, wonderful, hardworking group of people that came here from Mississippi, the Mississippi Choctaw people coming here, people from Oklahoma, the Navajo folks coming in, and they came on their own or they came in small families, sometimes with just a brown paper bag full of things with promises of jobs and furniture and apartments, and a lot of those things were given to them. Many people stayed, many people went back home, but the people that you're going to meet as a result of Santa Fe Days in the Park or when you go to powwows with us, you're going to find that these are third generation, second generation, fourth generation, great grandchildren that have benefited from that relocation, and they have themselves brought to this community Indian culture. Sorry about the noise. They have brought Indian culture, Native American culture, Native American Indian culture. Now you notice I kind of go back and forth between, from myself growing up, we called ourselves Indian people. Then it became Native American people. Actually, it was American Indian people, then Native American. And our preference as a organization actually is to call ourselves American Indian. And there's a history behind that comes from a federal government policy in the Reagan administration that changed the name to Native American, in which everybody who is born in America is basically Native American. Another thing that was pointed out to me in the Ask Uncle Gregory video on this topic is that if you have to shorten Native American on a application, it means NA, not applicable. And his point was well made that we are very applicable. Also, Russell Means addressed this, who is one of the heads of the American Indian movement, and he strongly felt that we should continue to call ourselves American Indians, and that quote is on our website to explain this. Now, as an organization, to make everybody happy, you'll notice that we try to say 3 long words, Native American Indian, so that everybody's happy. We get a little of everything. I don't know that that's going to still satisfy people. I would prefer for us to use tribal names, but it is what it is. And so I just wanted to apologize if if you feel like, why is she using just the shortened version? Imagine it in your mind as an N, a D, and an N, which is kind of a jokester way we have of spelling Indian, and then maybe you'll feel better. In our area, we have a lot of resources that Native people use, which identifies how rich our culture is. So we have the Urban Intertribal Center. We have an Indian radio show, KNON Beyond Bows and Arrows, from 6 to 8 p.m. on Sunday nights. We have a Methodist church, an all tribes church. We have youth groups starting up, our Soar Beyond group. We have a stickball practice group with one of our volunteers, Eli Hickman. We have American Indian Heritage Day, which is a very vibrant group. And we have water protectors that live in our local area that are concerned about the DAPL issues and our water issues that are going on. And so even though we may be invisible in terms of, as a community, people may not recognize who we are and where to find us, when you start volunteering with us, you'll see that there's a rich variety of people, but each group of people has kind of its own culture. And so we have tribal culture, we have our native culture, we have our organizational culture, and what have you. And so we kind of look at the Indigenous Institute of the Americas as kind of the kids. We're interested in our future generations. And so a lot of our activities are based on helping kids get engaged with the culture, educating them, getting them hooked in with some of our wonderful information about agriculture and plants and medicine. And so some of us are just known in that way. I think people in the community call me the seed lady, if that helps at all. And then I want to move on now to powwow etiquette in general. Besides the being as a vendor, being a little more laid back and less invasive, try not to be pushy with people. Try not to be pushy with other vendors. Do not ask too many questions of folks. Things that you may not consider being personal may be considered very personal. And so if you have questions, ask me privately, ask Gregory privately, ask one of our volunteers like Jessica Johnson, whose family's been here for generations. If you're curious, ask us first before you ask a stranger information that may put them off. And so if you see something happening, it seems a little odd or interesting to you. Maybe they're doing something ceremonially. Maybe they have a reason for doing what they're doing, and they're not going to explain it to you, and it would be very, very rude to actually ask about it. The same goes with being what I call interfering. We believe in non-interference, and that can be extreme non-interference, to the point to where if you do something that is offensive, in other cultures somebody may say, hey guy, that was really rude, like, quit asking so many questions. In our culture, it's more likely you'll get silence. People will act like they didn't hear you. They may move away from you. They may just kind of slither off and vanish, or they may consider you invisible. That is our way. Rather than embarrassing you by confronting you, it's not up to us to change you, and it's not up to us to find your path for you. Now, I, as your auntie and being charge of the event, sometimes have to step in and say things to you, and I'm not meaning to hurt anybody's feelings. And to be honest with you, it feels totally awkward to me when I have to do it. And so if I'm pushed to the point where I have to say something, then please know that I've really struggled with it in my heart before I've said anything to you. And the same goes for other people in our culture. We typically just try to just help you through you watching. We try to do it through role modeling and hope that you're watching and listening so that you can mimic us and not do something that's bad. I'm going to give you a simple example. You see a vendor's jewelry, you love their jewelry, or you love their artwork, and you say, I think you really should sell this on eBay. Have you thought about selling it on Amazon? Or you need to take your paintings and you ought to make postcards out of them, because I think those would sell really good. Do you want me to help you? Do you have a social media website? Blah, blah, blah. And this is going on. And a lot of times artists have a reason why they don't do what you're suggesting that they do. They either have a preference that they really not get involved with social media, or they have tried it before and it hasn't worked, or whatever their reason is. It's not up to you to tell people what to do. Even when something is really, really going wrong, we will not tell somebody how to do it, including children. We try to let children make their own mistakes, try to let them work through it on their own before we intervene. And we usually only intervene if a child looks at us and says, help me, or would you like my help? So the same goes with adults. We all have a reason why we do what we do. Please trust that if we're not doing what's going on in your mind, there's still a reason why we're not doing what's in your mind. And just because it is in your mind doesn't mean that it is the right thing, the best thing, or what's good for all of us. And so please trust that if you're looking at something in an odd way and you're like, how come, I wonder how come they're not doing it this way, there's probably a reason for it. And the reason could even be as ridiculous as, yep, we had never thought of that before. But how do you approach a Native person when you see something that could be done better? Well, is it done better because it's faster? Is it done better because it's quicker? Is it done better because you're in linear thinking? Sometimes we are doing things the way we're doing them because we want to let everybody be a part. We look at things as a collective, as a whole. We're like a family. Even in volunteering, I look at everyone as my family. And so if it means that somebody who is slower is doing something, but they're contributing, they're helping, and they're working hard, I'm going to encourage that. And I'm not going to step in and have somebody else do it because somebody else thinks that they could do it faster, better, more efficient, cheaper, whatever it is that's going to be more linear. We look at things more circular. How is it going to help build someone's self-esteem? If an 8-year-old wants to try something that really a 30-year-old can do, let's let the 8-year-old at least try it. Let's help encourage them and give them a lot of strokes for at least making that effort, even if it took us longer. That's our future committee. Why are we not encouraging that? So we may do things in a very different way than you've been taught to do things. We definitely don't take a Eurocentric view of work and how we get things done, and that's very frustrating to people from outside the culture. It appears backwards. It appears slower. It appears that it's more a social thing than it is a work thing. But for us, socializing is work. Working together as a team is more important than working individually. It's the effort and the outcome that's more important than the individual. So I'm going to stop right there, and I'll get with you on a second part of this soon.